but why don't we call the meeting to order? Good evening. My name is Bob Connors. It is 6:02 p.m. and I'd like to call the December 17th meeting of the Newbury Conservation Commission to order. Mason, can you read the remote open meeting law preamble and take a roll call of the members present?
As a preliminary matter, this is Mason Ferret, Conservation Agent, of the Newbury Conservation Commission, and I call the December 17th meeting to order and permit me to confirm that all members are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mary Rimmer, TJ Conti, Mick Brown.
Yes, here.
Diane O'Brien.
Yeah.
Woody Knight.
Yes.
Bob Connors.
Yes.
And Frank Wettenkamp. All right. Good evening. This is the open meeting. The Newbury Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Newbury Conservation Commission is convening by Zoom, as posted on the agenda of the Conservation Commission section of the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that attendees are participating by video conference. Meeting materials were provided to the board and committee members prior to the meeting for review. Applicants or other representatives may be called upon to speak and or share information to the screen if able on the fly. We're now turning to the first item on the agenda, but before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your mic, use earbuds, and remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. If board committee members wish to engage with other members, please do so through the chair. After the board and committee members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. The chair will first seek questions through the chat function. Where participants are using this function, please list your name, address, and then your question. The chair will seek questions from the public who wish to speak. They'll be asked to identify their names, address, and question. Once the chair has a list of all public commentators, they will call on each by name and afford 3 minutes for any comments. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote.
Okay, thank you, Mason. Good evening, everyone. Upcoming meeting dates, January 7th, 2025 and January 21st, 2025. First order of business will be meeting minutes review for the December 3rd, 2024 meeting. Team, why don't we take a minute, review those, see if there's any questions, comments, or corrections. Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes for December 3rd.
So moved.
moved. Second.
Okay, so that is, was that Woody and Diane?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, roll call, all in favor? Woody,
Yes.
Mick,
Aye.
Diane,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
and Bob Connors votes yes. Right, hang on 1 second. Okay, next order of business. Request for a determination, 13 Plumbush Downs. Applicant would like to replace existing deck and extend the deck out back and around the side of the property. Mason, can you provide an overview and a recommendation on this matter?
Yep, so this site is right on the marsh. It's within 100 feet of the salt marsh. They have an open building permit right now, redoing a lot of the interior and exterior. I have some photos to share as well, but I would suggest that the commission center their questions around the footings of the deck to kind of explain the impact that will be shown.
Okay.
Share.
Is the applicant or their representative on the call?
Do not believe they are here right now.
Okay, well, why don't you show us the pictures and we can discuss this, but we won't be taking any final action on this tonight without the applicants here to answer questions. Unless we have no question.
Can everyone see this?
Yes.
So this is the existing deck here, and the
Wait.
proposal.
Yeah, Mason, you know what? You went back to your table of pictures rather than the individual. You could click on the picture you had that, but yeah, there you go. Okay,
Alright.
thank you.
So yeah, the existing house now already has a deck, and the proposal is to continue the extension of this deck around the corner, into the left side of this house here. And,
Okay, so it is not going to be encroaching onto the marsh.
Correct.
And the marsh setback. Okay, is there a site plan?
There is, and I believe that that is in the folder.
Can you pull that up?
One second.
I saw the plan that shows the structure, but it wasn't a site plan per se. It was more of a,
Yeah, I'm not seeing the, oh, here it is.
There wasn't a site plan in the Dropbox.
Yeah, there was just kind of a rough, sketch of the existing structure. Second.
So there you go.
Yeah. Okay. Typically, Mason, at a minimum, we request a site plan.
Yep,
And shows, bordering vegetation with, with the setbacks and the resource. So I think at a minimum, we're going to need that to further this discussion and consider what action the commission's going to take.
yep, I'll bring up the GIS just to give everyone perspective of where this is. This is the building that was just shown in the photos here. And this is the side of the house that they're looking to extend the deck on.
Okay, so that actually is towards the resource.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so team, from my perspective, I think we're gonna need a site plan with some real detail on this. With the setbacks and the resource areas, but why don't I stop there and open this up to questions to the members? Woody, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I agree with you. We're gonna need to see more, so I'll just defer any questions for a later date.
Okay, thank you, Woody. Mick, what are your
Thank you.
thoughts?
Same thing, we need to see a plan with all the setbacks.
Okay. Diane, any comments on this?
Yeah, my comments just had to do with the footings. There's nothing about what kind of footings they're gonna be.
Right.
The fact that it's over lawn, the pictures I don't think were in the Dropbox, so the fact that it's over lawn rather than, dune or some, well, I guess we wouldn't have dune out by the river, but just all about the footings and what we're disturbing by digging in, and they're tripling, it looks like they're tripling the size of the deck, so
Mhm.
that was it.
Hey, Frank, any questions on this?
No, I agree. I think it's all about the footings from what I can see on this plan.
Yeah.
And how far above the ground it's gonna be.
And yeah,
Mason, go back to the picture that you had that showed the existing deck.
Yep.
I mean, that will give us an elevation, if that is what they're matching with, which is what it seems to be.
Love Mason's pictures.
All right, so team, basically what I'm saying is there's no delineation included with this application. So the type of resources, location relative to the project site are not shown. Clearly, it's land subject to coastal storm flowage. Geez, easy for me to say tonight. It appears to at least be in the buffer zone to the salt marsh, but proximity is unknown. Deck dimensions, type of piers and pilings are also not indicated. Also, page 3 of the RDA form incorrectly checks item C1 instead of item C1C. So the recommendation is we need the above referenced information. Mary had sent in a note. She's going to be joining the meeting later. So those were Mary's comments I was just reading, and I certainly concur with that. So Mason, I think what we're going to do is we're going to push this off to the first meeting in January. If you could reach out to the applicant that more information is required
Yep.
before we can take further action on this. And that would be our typical process for an RDA on this. Okay, is there anyone from the public on the call that wanted to offer comments? Okay. So team, I think when this comes back to us with the information that's requested, we can entertain a site visit if the commission or a member wants to go out.
Bob, I think we have a hand up.
Oh, okay. Janice?
Janice Forrester.
Hi, sorry, I couldn't click the right button. It's got to be this kind of a night tonight. Isn't this already being worked on now?
My understanding is there's an existing building permit that is allowing the interior. They're not expanding outside the footprint of the existing structure.
Okay,
On the permit they have now is my understanding. Now that they're looking to expand the deck, they're coming before us for guidance and what the next steps are.
okay, thank you.
Okay, is that an accurate description, Mason, of where this
Yep.
project stands?
Yep, that's
Okay.
correct.
Okay. Anything else, Janice?
Not yet.
Okay. All right. So Mason, why don't we do this? Why don't we just push this off to the January 7th meeting? When you talk to the applicant, I would suspect that they're not going to be able to get a surveyor on board and someone to do the delineation prior to that meeting. So they may want to push it back to the January 21st or to a February meeting.
Yep.
Okay. So no further action. It's not a public hearing, doesn't require a vote to continue a public hearing. Next order of business is a request for determination on 49 Southern Boulevard. Applicant wants to install a generator on the property. Mason, why don't you give us an overview on this and a recommendation?
Yeah, so this is one second, I'm just pulling something up. This is pretty straightforward. They've submitted some plans with the elevation and the location. And that can be seen in the Dropbox that I will share here. And I had reviewed this and they are elevating this above grade. It's at least 2 feet above grade. And it is not on the property line, which can be seen in these photos. Here. And then just below is the sketched location.
Okay. Can you pull up the GIS just to see where the wetland boundaries are on this?
Yep.
What it's showing? Obviously, it's within the resource area, 'cause it's on the island.
Here we are.
Mason, do you have pictures? Do you have any pictures of this and the
Uh,
location?
I do not have pictures of this location.
Hello, my name is Jim from DeVoe Electric. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, Jim, hang on 1 second if you would.
Yep.
Okay, Mason, have you driven by this site?
Yeah, I was able to drive by. There's plenty of room in this back area for the installation of the generator. And I didn't see any major dunes that this would be affecting.
What's the ground cover now? Is it, as I recall, is this actually just a regular grass lawn or is it beach grass?
You can see here, I think it's mostly sand and then some sparse vegetation.
Okay. Okay, why don't I stop there and Jim, the
Yes.
electrician, why don't you give us your presentation if you would?
So I have a picture. It is grass, regular grass in that backyard. We're going to be placing it by the air conditioning units on the southeast side of the house.
Jim,
There's
do you have
nothing-
it, do you have any pictures?
I can possibly show you this one. I'm not sure how to work the video. Let me see if I can get the video working here. Can you see something now? Can you
yeah.
see that? Is that upside down or right?
Yeah, it looks upside down to me, but,
I'm not sure.
okay. You know, this is about 100 feet from my house. I apologize. I could have driven by this thing and, okay,
Okay,
Yeah.
wait, there you go.
yeah, okay.
That look pretty
It's
good.
gone.
But how far off the house, Jim, are you proposing to put the
About-
elevator platform?
About 4 to 5 feet away.
Okay. Okay, questions? Woody, any questions for Jim on this project?
No, I don't have any questions. Thanks, Bob.
Okay. Mick, how about yourself? Any questions?
No questions, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Diane, any questions?
Now, Jim, you said it was over lawn. It looked like it was like concrete.
No, that's all lawn. There's stone that circles the house about 3 feet out, and we're going to be just past that.
And what's the foundation wood? What's
No,
going
it's
into the
a-
ground?
It's stone and concrete.
No, I mean, so they're
Oh.
concrete
Oh.
pilings.
Sorry for the
What's
generator. yeah,
supporting the generator?
6x6 pressure treated wood.
Okay, so what?
And you're, obviously, is this going to be fueled by propane that's on site, or is it self-contained with diesel?
Propane.
What's the pathway to your propane tanks, Jim? Is it straight back to the house?
Yes, on your right-hand side of the house, it's straight back, wide open.
So you'll be trenching in the stone pathway? Is that what you're,
Yes, trenching to the house, about 4 feet away from the generator, straight to the house.
okay. Yeah, 3
There
feet
are
of that
propane-
is, yeah, 3
Sorry.
feet of that is already crushed stone, as you said, right?
Correct, yes.
Frank, any question? Diane, anything else before I move on to Frank?
Nope.
Okay.
I,
Frank, what are your thoughts?
I think it looks pretty straightforward to me.
Yeah, I think it's met the criteria that we typically look for, which is it's elevated. It's on a platform that's on wood posts. The trenching to the fuel source is primarily through crushed stone. And what's left is more of a grass lawn and not beach grass. Okay, any raised hands from the public at this time? Okay, Mason, do you want any other further comments? Do you want to offer?
Nope, no comments at this time.
Okay, do any members have a request for a site visit or additional information?
No,
Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to issue a negative finding for 49 Southern Boulevard.
So moved?
second,
Okay, who wants to be second?
second,
Okay, thank you, Frank. Okay, roll call vote. All in favor? Woody,
Yes,
Nick?
Aye.
Diane,
Yes.
Frank,
yes.
and Bob Connors votes yes. Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thank you all, appreciate it.
Okay.
Hi, Jim, thank you.
Okay, so team, as a practice, we carry on the agenda open enforcement orders. At this time, as I recall, we have, how many do we have? We have 4 enforcement orders that are open. All have complied with the enforcement order issued. It requires no action on the part of the commission tonight. Okay, moving on, extension request, we have none. Certificates of compliance, we have none. Okay, our next order of business is a public hearing on DEP file number 050-1425, 19 Independence Way West. Amended NOI submittal, applicant's representative is submitting an amendment to the previously submitted NOI. Mason, can you provide an overview and a recommendation on this matter? I just want to clarify, the public hearing is limited to the scope of the proposed amendment. All of the other matters that have been settled are not before the commission tonight.
Yeah, so this is a revision to the mitigation planting area. It was already approved by DEP. The revisions include the increase of the mitigation plantings through changes to one of the driveways, and recessing skirting on the deck to allow vegetation survival under the west-facing deck. Those changes can be seen in the plans that were uploaded to the folder, and DEP has noted that upon the commission approving these changes, they will be withdrawing their superseding order.
Okay, I see Tom Hughes. Tom, just identify yourself and make your presentation.
Sure. Tom Hughes with Hughes Environmental Consulting. And as Mason put it, after the commission approved the project, DEP did intervene. This is one of those where they wanted to basically see the site. And I think those of you who have seen the site can understand why it's not your typical dune site. It certainly has suffered some impacts from the removal of the home, the abatement of a spill that had occurred there. And Upon reviewing the plans, they asked us to take some measures to increase the vegetation count. And if I can share my screen, I'll just walk you through
Certainly.
those changes, and those are what's really this appeal is about. Okay. All right, let me get to the plan. Okay, so there are two driveways that are part of the project. There's this main driveway here with enough room to turn around. You may recall we had a little stripe here so that there was just enough for tires to back out on in the main project. We had, as the commission had approved it, this was a solid driveway. But in further discussions during the site visit with DEP, it became apparent that the primary purpose for this driveway is going to be using sort of an ATV style snowplow to get in and out of the driveway, and then occasional use of the driveway and garage by other vehicles. So what we were able to do is take the middle out of this driveway, and that will be planted with Pennsylvania sedge. Pennsylvania sedge is a native sedge to Plum Island. It also is shorter than American beach grass, so less likely to kind of touch a heat shield on a vehicle that might be using it. So it's more appropriate for using within that type of tire stripe section. It will increase our vegetative count. And then the other thing we did is the original approved plan had skirting that went along the perimeter of this deck. And we recessed that in. So the skirting no longer runs along the perimeter, and that allows us to plant underneath that deck. So that will be planted with American beach grass, and we should get plenty of light. There's plenty of clearance underneath. And I think there's one other notice is that the DEP did ask us to change the language for our surface to crushed stone or shell drive rather than gravel. They wanted that crushed stone language in there. So we made that change. It's very simple in the normal course of things. Had DEP not intervened and we made these changes, this would be a minor revision in front of you. However, in order for DEP to drop the appeal, we need to cement this into the decision by having you amend the order and change the plan of record from the previously approved plan by the commission to this plan, which has an 11/25/2024 date. And as Mason indicated, DEP has agreed that upon adoption of the amendment and issuance of the amended order of conditions, DEP is prepared to withdraw their appeal, which would then leave the amended decision standing.
Okay, so they're looking for us to reference the revised plan that's been submitted dated 11/25/24.
Right. None of the other project elements change. Our overall
Right.
limit of work doesn't change. Our overall impact areas, because they include temporary impacts, they don't change. So we don't need to change anything else on that order of conditions other than the plan reference.
Tom, do you have an elevation of the deck where now you said you're recessing the
Yeah, let me
skirting? That deck is at what elevation? It's as I recall, it was substantially above grade. to
yeah, it
begin
is. I mean, it's at the first floor
Okay,
of the structure. And so the obstruction was that we were coming down up to about 3 feet above grade or 4 feet above grade with skirting. So we basically brought that into the main body of the building so that the deck has that recessed.
so there's no
during-
skirting, there's no skirting on the footprint, the outside footprint of the,
deck.
okay.
Right, there had been. And we had provided elevation views during the original permitting. I did not submit an elevation view showing that, but we did show the perimeter of the skirting recessed back here now.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry, skirting recessed to here. So then we plant in this area, and on Plum Island, we've had great success getting vegetation to grow onto decks, when they're up 6, 7, 8 feet off the ground.
Okay, thank you, Tom. I'll open this up to questions from the members. Woody, do you have any questions for Tom on this?
Just a clarification question. We have the grass under the deck, which we just discussed, and that's on the west side, so that will actually have some survivability. And you said in the driveway, it's sage grass?
Sedge, it's a Pennsylvania
Sedge.
sedge.
Okay. And the survivability of that's?
Yeah,
or-
that's a native plant that grows in the dunes in the back dune environments on Plum Island. It's actually found naturally. If you were to go into the reservation area, you'd find it, fairly prevalent, and it is, it's kind of all over the place within the back dune environments of Plum Island that are not developed.
Okay, and the third thing the third thing.
Oh, the third thing was the changing of the descriptor to be proposed crushed stone or shell drive. They just don't want to have fine material, like stone dust or anything in the driveway material. So they wanted it, I think consistent with that, like a pea stone would be consistent with that and would be something we could use, but we just couldn't use a gravel that had a lot of fines and really packed down.
Okay, thank you, Tom, for your explanation. Seems straightforward to me. Thank
So, Tom, I want to just clarify one point.
Yeah.
So the ATV driveway is the only area where let's call it the void of the proposed crushed stone or crushed shells will be sage grass? Or will sage grass also be planted in the other areas?
This area was already to be Pennsylvania sedge.
Okay,
Okay. It
So you
almost from a distance it looks a little bit like lawn grass, but it actually has a triangular shape to it, and it's a little bit of a rougher grass. It's used quite a bit by landscapers in various settings, but it is a great native grass, or sedge. And where it will go is in this center area here, and it already is going in here.
it's already proposed in that area.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Mick, any questions for Tom on this project?
you.
Tom, could you collapse your screen? I think
Absolutely.
I can't see Mick.
I'm sorry, I was on mute.
Oh,
Here I am. I think the original plan had a U-shaped driveway all in front of the house, correct?
No.
All right.
No, I mean, it had we had enough area to do something like that, we might have, but we had to stop. So
Right.
it almost had that appearance, except it stopped, and we had that tire stripe so that we had enough room to turn around.
Yeah, so the only major change is that tire stripe. Basically, you turn it into a central cart path. Right?
Yeah, that and the planting under the western deck.
Okay. So, and what's the fill in between the sedge? I mean, is that going to be
It would just be sand.
okay? All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mary, welcome. We were just going through, Tom had just gone through his presentation. He just highlighted the changes. One was the skirting on the west deck was going to be recessed back, and there was going to be a planting underneath it. And that on the driveway, I'm going to call it the east driveway, that was no longer going to be solid with the proposed materials, but it was going to have a planting area in the center of it, which was going to be Pennsylvania sage. And the other thing was the driveway materials are proposed now to be either a crushed stone or a crushed seashells. And that's pretty much the Tom, and correct me if that's doesn't identify your proposed scope that you mentioned.
Right. No, that is it. I mean, it's Pennsylvania sedge. Mary and I know, we want to make sure we're different between sage and sedge. They're two different things. So it's a Pennsylvania sedge. And the reason, Mary, is because we want something that's going to grow in there, but not up against the heat shield of a car that might be parked there. So the sedge tends to be a lower height than American beach grass or the other options that we would have.
Oh, I'm sorry. I assume we're talking about 19 Independence side.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah,
Oh, yeah,
yes,
yeah,
Mary,
yeah.
yeah, we're at
Yeah.
19 Independence.
That's what I figured.
I
Okay,
apologize for that,
Yes.
Mary.
that all sounds fine. It sounds like it's already been reviewed by DEP and
Yep, they're prepared to withdraw their appeal upon the commission adopting this as an amendment.
I did look at the plan earlier today and don't have any further comments.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Diane, any questions or comments for Tom Hughes on this matter?
I remember this from before and we approved it previously. So you're just looking for the order to change the plan of record to indicate 11/25/24, correct?
Right.
And that will encompass everything that you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Diane. Frank, any questions on this one?
No,
Okay, so procedurally, Tom, in talking to Mason earlier, where this is really an amendment, we're going to amend the original notice of intent, and we're going to amend the order of conditions reflecting this changes, and then both the notice of intent and it needs to be resent into DEP.
So the procedurally, and I also want to procedurally that this is a public hearing on the amendment. So
Right,
the
hold on,
subject to
yeah.
the amendment, you do have an
Right.
abutter whose hand is raised. So I just want
Yeah,
to make
no,
sure
wait,
we don't miss
when we
that.
get through the
Um,
commission, we
right,
will then go
so-
to the abutters.
So procedurally, this went into DEP the same way a NOI does. But on an amendment, what I did is I gave you one page of the NOI form that changed, and that was the page with the plan reference. All my other numbers and information on the original NOI form stayed the same. We didn't change any elements of the narrative, any elements of the invasive species control, all of that stuff stays the same. The only thing changing is the increase in vegetation and the clarification of the material for the driveway. So the way it works is, should the commission vote to approve this tonight, Mason would take essentially the same order of conditions that was issued before. On the first page, there's a box at the top where you would check off amended order of conditions. And then on the part of the form that has the plan reference, change the plan reference to it. And then update the signatures, but the issuance date stays the original issuance date.
Okay, that's the order of conditions on the
Right.
signature page. On
Yeah.
the notice of intent, what do we have to do with that?
Not, you have to put what I submitted to you in your files, DEP.
Okay, so
has
it's
received
just,
that.
gotcha,
Right.
okay. All right, thank you. All right, any other questions from the members before I open this up to the public?
No.
Okay, Julia, I see you have a raised hand. If you could just give us your name and your address. You're on mute, Julia, if you would like to speak. Julia, you're still on mute. Mason, can you unmute Julia?
Yeah, I just requested for her to unmute.
Okay.
But it seems it's not working.
She needs to do it at her end if Mason's already done it.
Julia, if you can hear us on the bottom of your screen, on the bottom row below the pictures on the far left-hand side is a microphone.
Okay, I think I've got it now.
You do.
Welcome, Julia. Julia, so welcome. If you could give us your name and address. Tonight's public hearing is limited only to the amendment proposed on the driveway and on the vegetation. So I'm going to ask that your questions be directed only to the amendment.
Yes, I
So that's the only-
understand.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, this is Julia Yoshida, 57 Sunset, and I have a simple question. When do you anticipate to begin the landscaping? And how long do you predict that it will take?
So, I don't have a solid answer for you because I don't know when the construction will begin. I know Dr. Mateos is very anxious to get going on this. And we typically don't begin the landscape work until the work on the house is largely inside. Because, ladders and staging and deliveries and things like that tend to undo good landscape work. We can give you a heads up when that's, when we have a better sense of when that's going to happen. There are certain elements I would like to begin work on in the spring if construction is started, some of the invasive work, etc. The ultimate final planting is likely next fall because I would imagine, assuming we start construction in the winter or very near future, then the planting would be kind of in the fall. But for fairly obvious reasons, until the approval is resolved with DEP, we don't have a construction schedule. So it's a tough question to give you a firm answer on.
When do you anticipate the hard cement to be removed from the sand dune?
It would be part of the initial work on site.
So that'll be spring.
Again, I don't have a construction schedule, but we
Okay.
certainly will, give you an
Thank
idea
you.
of when that's going to happen.
I would appreciate that. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Julia. Are there any other members from the public that would like to comment on this project? Okay, hearing none. Do any members have a request for a site visit, additional information, adding any additional content to the notice of intent?
No.
Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved?
Okay,
Second,
do we have a second? Woody, you seconded that? Okay, roll call, all in favor? Mary,
Yes.
Woody,
yes.
Mick,
Aye.
Diane,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
and Bob Connors votes yes. Okay, so I just want to have some clarification. Tom, do we need to add any special conditions memorializing the Pennsylvania sedge or the change to crushed stone or crushed shells? I didn't see, is there a footnote on your plan identifying those?
Yes, they're all noted on the plan, just by referring to the plan that incorporates that. You also have my amendment letter request, which also goes in your file.
Right.
And any order of conditions that you issue by reference incorporates all the materials that were submitted to you. So, when you issue an order of conditions, it may not be obvious to the contractor if they don't have all the things that were submitted to you, but you're acting on the record, on the public hearing record, and on the materials that we provide. So it's all documented. DEP did not ask for any, and I don't see any need for any additional things, and I would hate to complicate it by putting something in that DEP didn't ask for.
Yeah, my question was more memorializing exactly what you had proposed.
No, I think my amendment letter combined with the plan, the new plan of record, does that.
Okay. All right, I will entertain a motion to amend the previously approved order of conditions for 19 Independence Way with the amendment proposed referencing the revised plan dated 11/25/24.
So moved.
Do we have a
Second.
second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mick. Okay, roll call, all in favor? Mary,
Well, since I missed some of this hearing, if I'm not needed for a quorum, I'll abstain.
okay. Woody,
Yes.
Mick,
Aye.
Diane,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
and Bob Connors votes yes. Okay, thank you, Tom.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, next matter is a continued public hearing for DEP file number 050 1436 286 High Road to construct an addition to an existing single-family dwelling with associated utilities, expanded driveway within a 100-foot buffer to the salt marsh area. Mason, did Bill Holt request a continuance on this matter?
Yeah, he had requested to continue. They've been in talk with Historic New England, and I think they're running into some obstacles with them. So he'll be reaching out soon, whether that's to withdraw or to give us some more supplemental information.
So does he want to continue this to the January 7th
Yep.
meet? Okay. Okay, at the owner's request, I'll entertain a motion to continue this matter to the January 7th, 2025 meeting.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Okay, so Diane and Woody. Okay, roll call, all in favor? Mary,
Yes.
Woody,
Yes.
Mick,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
and Bob Connors votes yes. Okay, thank you. Next matter is a continued public hearing for 268 Middle Road, Governor's Academy. Applicant is submitting a notice of intent for an ecological restoration project. The applicant proposes to remove a damaged and non-functioning culvert on a stream that is on the campus property. Outside and student research has been done to measure the pre-existing impacts of the damaged culvert. They propose to remove the damaged culvert, repair the surrounding marsh, and install a wooden footbridge across the stream to access the island and other parts of the marsh. Team, as we had a site visit last Thursday, Mary, Mason, and I were present. Mason, why don't you give us your overview? I do see Wendy is on the call.
Yeah, so on the sidewalk, Wendy was able to point out some of the potential staging areas, as well as walk us through what would be the ideal construction sequence. In addition, I've been looking on the portal, and DEP has no technical comments right now. And yeah, I think Wendy is going to be here to address some of the concerns that the commission originally had, and also give us some more information on the bridge crossing and the specs related to that.
Okay. Wendy, good evening. If you could just give us your name and title and update the commission.
Wendy Reed, Environmental Manager for the Governor's Academy. I don't have any additional information other than I do have some slides that show the proposed bridge construction. I know there was some conversation at the site walk whether that should be part of the ecological restoration. And we really believe that it is, because by completely removing the culvert, we're getting the maximum restoration value. But to do that, we need still a way to cross. So we do view the bridge as being an integral part of this restoration project. And the bridge that we selected has the least impact of several possibilities that we looked at. So if you're interested, I could, if I can share my screen, I can give you a little bit more detail than I did in the original application about what the bridge would look like, or answer any other questions you might have at this time.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful. Wendy, why don't you share your slide deck?
Okay. So this is kind of a, it's not a photo, it's kind of a stylized view of what it looks like. This particular bridge, it's 20 feet long, 4 feet wide. This is shown in water, but we're not proposing that. We would have each of these posts on opposite banks of the channel. You can't really see it. I can show you in further slides, but down at the bottom, the 4x4 posts go through, it's called a mud plate. And that actually holds it in place. It's also adjustable so that when you're installing the bridge, it can be leveled fairly easily. We do want to have hand railings on it because the depth to the bottom of the creek is more than 3 feet. So the next pages just show a little bit of detail as to how the bridge is constructed. These plans are available from the vendor that we would work with. It's all pressure treated construction. It's kind of the supports. The most significant change we would make is that instead of having wood decking be the strut, the crossing pieces would use perforated plastic 1x4 sections. And then this is the photo down at the bottom. And these are made to be inserted in panels to make it easier to install the bridge. This is some of the fittings that I was talking about. This is the mud plate that the 4x4 goes through. This is how it attaches to the side. This is a driving cap. This goes over the top of the 4x4 post so that you can drive it in with a sledgehammer. They do suggest that you cut the end of the 4x4 post. It's almost like sharpening a pencil, just so that it goes in with the least damage to the marsh. I do have a clip if you wanted to see the installation process. I'm not sure if that's necessary at this point, but I'm happy to show that. And the other option that we had talked about, this is the one I think we discussed last time. I told you it was $19,000 to $20,000. I mean, these are, aluminum. They're, really high quality, but they do require quite a bit of foundation on either end. So aside from the cost, we just felt like this would be more impact. And it also, just aesthetically, we didn't feel like that really belonged in a kind of a pristine salt marsh. So,
So Wendy, I'd be interested in seeing the video on the install. I think that might be,
okay, sure.
as long as it's not 45 minutes long. If
No, I think it's 1 minute and 30 seconds. So here.
Okay.
That was my question.
Now, will you be manning that sledgehammer yourself, or do we have some young students that?
I gotta say, there's probably some young students out there that can swing a
Yeah,
hammer.
it's gonna be a couple of lacrosse players mix that.
Only if Wendy does it.
Are you proposing that as a special condition, Diane?
Yes. They require it.
So Wendy, on your plan, have you located the actual proposed post locations on the site plan?
Yes. Oh, not on the site plan. No, no. We looked at them in the field. It's going to be. Let me stop sharing here. Going to be a little bit challenging because we won't know the extent of the bridge until the mosquito abatement folks pull the culvert out. Right. Some of the bank has been compromised, so that's why I'm saying 20 feet. That's the maximum would be. Right now, I think it's going to be 10 feet, but we might want to have a couple of feet on each end. So that will really determine, the extent of the bridge and where the corner posts are located.
Okay, and what is the name of the bridge you're proposing for the manufacturer? Is it?
Great Northern Dock. They're located in Maine.
Okay, anything else you want to offer before I open this up to the members for questions?
No.
Okay, thank you. Mary, questions for Wendy on this?
Yes, so I'm just curious that the Parker River Station has an aluminum elevated structure, that we're gonna be talking about later in our agenda. It was put in with helical piles, and it was a little bit lower impact than what you're showing there with the 4x4. My concern is that driving those posts into the mud is one thing, but driving it through the peat in a dense layer of roots and rhizomes is a little bit more challenging and a little bit potential for causing some expansion of the peat in the area that you're pounding. So I would think that helical piles in the situation would be much less impact. That's just my, I'm not an engineer, but that would be my take on it. And it's hard to understand what, if any, impacts there would be of this bridge on the, the resources without a little bit more detail on, where the posts are gonna go, if there is any support that's proposed in the waterway, because that showed supports in the waterway itself, and I don't think we want to have that. I think we would want to specify that they be a certain distance from the bank, so that it entirely spans, and that we would need to know the elevation above the marsh where this is tying in. And, is it a step off or is it a ramp? Typically these structures need to be elevated. The one to one, so they're with it, if it's a 4 foot wide bridge, that it needs to be elevated 4 feet high according to the Mass DEP Pier and Dock guidelines. So, and we don't have topo or any detailed topography in that particular area. So I'm trying to simplify this as best we can, because this is not typically what we would see to approve a bridge. We would need more detail, and I don't know if this is something that we could approve the removal of the culvert under the ecological restoration with the condition that it, that the final bridge design be submitted for final approval prior to implementation or something like that. We usually can't issue orders that require submitting additional plans, as a contingency, but I'm not sure how else to handle it in this case, because we don't really have a lot to go on for,
Yeah.
this is maybe how you're gonna do it, is one potential design, but I suspect as you get closer to the time of doing this, that you might have some other options that are a little bit lower impact than a full wooden boardwalk, because this is intended to really just, provide a means of getting across the stream. But from what I understand, this path is not very heavily used, and it is marsh from the end of the bridge all the way to the island. So you don't, there's some foot traffic within the marsh that we want to try to minimize, so you don't end up having a lot of channel. I know there's an old road there, but it's grown over and it's now subsided enough so there's part of the marsh. So I guess I'm very supportive of the project. I think it's a great idea to get the culvert out of there. I want to try to help you out and make the process as, as streamlined as we can. I'm just having trouble with the, lack of really firm details on the bridge part of it.
Sure.
Wendy,
Yeah, I mean,
I was just gonna suggest, Wendy, could you pull up the site plan again?
I
really
don't know,
isn't
Mason,
one.
is that? Pardon me? Mason, is that something you can pull up from the Dropbox? I don't have that loaded up.
Yeah,
The site plan.
it should be in the Dropbox.
Okay. So the only thing that's really undecided, Mary, is just the location of the 4x4s. I was just showing that picture of the larger aluminum bridge because we had talked about that as a potential option. I did also look at using a gangway like we had discussed last time. That's still around $4,000 or $5,000, and we'd have to come up with a way to pin it to the bank. I mean, those are made to attach to wooden structures. So I don't know that would be any less impact, but I mean, I'm open to considering it. We just felt like the wooden structure would be the least impact in terms of,
Yeah,
impact
you
on
would
the
have
marsh.
you would essentially have an arched ramp is what
Right.
it would be, and it would have, it would be sort of a custom design, a certain length, and it would pin with helical piles on either end.
Wendy,
Yeah.
could you take down your
I'm
plan?
I'm not sure how to, oh, here we go, sorry.
There you go. Because Mason probably can't put up the site plan.
Yep, give me 1 second.
Okay.
If there's a way to roll in a finalizing of the location of the bridge as part of this order, I think that's fine. I'd be supportive of that. I just don't know logistically how that would work.
What we've done in the past, Mary, as I recall, we worded a condition where that prior to the install of a feature, that it would be, it'd be a pre-meeting with the agent and or the commission. We had some wording that we've used in the past to do that.
In this case, I think it would be, we would actually need to approve the final plan in a meeting.
Okay. Do you think it might have to come back as an amendment?
I'm just,
Yep,
I'm not
yep.
sure what the best way to handle it is in this
Yeah.
particular case. And one opportunity is just to make a special condition that says, you know, come back to the board with a final bridge design that has these dimensions, you know, this much height above the marsh, and it's, you know, set back at least whatever, however many feet that we decide is appropriate from the banks of the creek. So that we can essentially set some boundaries for how it needs to be designed.
So Wendy, you said that you're proposing up to a 20-foot clear span that will touch down on each side of the, you know, the former culvert.
Now
Am I correct?
that was, yeah, structurally, that was that example that I showed you. That's a 4x20. I think it will need to be less, so we would just do like
Okay.
one less section, yeah.
But it would be, you know, up to 20 feet. You wouldn't exceed
It
20
could-
feet.
No,
Okay.
no. Because we'd have to put post in the stream in order to make it more than that, and we don't, you know, we don't want to do that, so.
So it's 20 feet, up to 20 feet wide by 4 feet, 20 feet long by 4 feet wide,
Right.
4 by 4 posts. Mary, typically, would we like to see those set back 32 feet, 30 feet, inches from the edge of the proposed channel? Or is it based on the stability of?
Yeah, to maintain the banks and to protect it from ice and you know, ice damage. I think 5 feet off of the bank, or, you know, 4 feet, something in that neighborhood. Oh, Diane.
Yeah, Diane.
Mary, I just had a question. When you're talking about the bridge, remember, was it 286 High Street that had that? I thought it was a really good bridge. Mason, I know we did a site visit. You were there. What was that made out of? It wasn't wood, but it was elevated and it allowed everything underneath to flow, and everything was growing really well.
Was that on the dock?
Yeah, it
aspect
was
of
a long
Okay.
boardwalk and it led out to the dock. And I remember we loved it because everything was growing so well underneath of it, but I forget honestly what it was made of.
You know, it had the decking. That's the other thing is, you know.
It was
these
spaced.
Space decking. So this had a you know, a grid deck so that the light was penetrating. It was aluminum, and it
was aluminum. Okay, I knew it wasn't wood. That's what I was trying to get at. I forgot what it was.
But the decking you're proposing, Wendy, is 50-60% letting light through?
Yes, it's perforated, yeah.
And is it a composite material?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so was it, again,
So
I'm just making, was it proposed as 50%, or what was the light passage through it?
They said 60%.
Okay, so it's allowing 60% light through the.
Yeah.
Through the
What's
decking.
the width? Do we
4
know?
feet,
It's 4
4 feet is,
The
yeah,
eight.
what I'm proposing.
Makes it tricky. Because this is a permanent structure, not a temporary structure, so it really needs to meet DEP's sort of pier and dock guidelines, because it's in the marsh. So I don't know how we get around that, without having a detail of the plan showing it at those minimum dimensions.
Mhm.
Okay, let me go through all the other members and then we can circle back on this too. Woody, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I don't know, the way to do it either, I guess, but, if we can keep the ball rolling with the culvert removal and have an amendment in the decision that we wait for bridge specs, that would be helpful for Governor Dummer. I would be supportive of that. As far as the bridge is concerned, details would be necessary so that it doesn't get kicked back to DEP so there's no more further problems. But if there's a way to write a decision that says that we can get bridge specs in the future, that would be great. And that's all.
Okay, thank you, Woody. Mick, what are your thoughts on this one?
I think kind of along the same lines, I guess, with Woody and Mary too, is with the pilings that'll support the structure. We're gonna need some detail on how they're installed and say to what depth they're going to be installed. Like, are they gonna be installed to refusal like at bedrock, or are they gonna be so many blows per foot that says this is stable surface? So I think that's an important, just to, I guess, add to your detail, say on a profile of the bridge construction, like how are the footings going to sit? They look like they're like a mud sill type of construction. So what's kind of the defining factor when we've driven it enough, I guess?
Yep.
So I think that'll be helpful to understand like the support structure. And just, I guess, out of curiosity, what is the kind of life expectancy of this type of bridge construction? Is it 5 years, 20 years, 50 years? So
What I was told is 20 to 25 years. It's basically pressure treated lumber. So, but part of the maintenance plan that I submitted is to inspect it every year and recoat it as necessary and check the hardware and all of that.
okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you have any soil profiles in that area. You haven't done any like core tubing or anything like that, right?
No, and in fact, I don't know what was done to make it a cart road. I don't know if they did anything to change the
Right.
soil structure. And I don't know that it's, strictly marsh right now, but yeah, we haven't done any cores.
Yeah, my thought is just, having done some things like this, as you start to back away and get closer to the cart road kind of reconstructed area, you could have some difficulty driving those pilings in,
Yeah.
it could really, so kind of defining what your limit of driving is going to be, whether it's the number of blows per foot or, a certain, like, you got to reach bedrock, or you have to, do some core sampling first to find out where bedrock is, type of thing. So it sits on something stable.
Mhm.
Mike, anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Diane, any other comments on this?
Does the removal of the culvert have to be tied into the bridge? Can you separate them as two separate projects?
We had intended for them to be together just because it seemed like it was, this is the ecological restoration is a much more streamlined process. We did want to have the mosquito abatement folks drive the post for us, as part of the culvert removal. And then we can build the bridge at our convenience in the spring. We would do that in-house. So,
Well,
so
that was my
the
thought, that if you could break it down and just get the approval for the culvert removal and then come back to either amend or once, without having to hold everything up while you figured out the bridge situation, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's some limitations because they're filing as an ecological restoration project.
That was my question.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of latitude for special conditions and everything. It's supposed to be a standalone order of conditions. You have to meet all the criteria to meet the category of ecological restoration and demonstrate you met all the requirements for submission for this type of tidal restriction removal. And then it's, you give them the order, you say, okay, you qualify, here's all the conditions that go with that type of project. So separating the two means that they would have to file as a normal notice of intent. But, not having the plans, not having any engineering, not understanding who's accounting for the structural stability of this. Maybe the company that makes these can do that, can give you a detail. Sometimes they do that. And you can get one directly from them if you're going to use them. they can provide something for us, I think that would be helpful.
Frank, any questions for Wendy? Wendy, I mean.
I'm sorry, who did you ask?
Frank, any questions on this?
Not really. I don't feel qualified to ask any questions on this at this time.
So I'm just gonna do a recap. In the past, we've always asked for either wood being installed in the ground or a helical pile. So you're proposing 4x4s driven to a depth of refusal that is unknown at this point. Mary, if they switch to helical piles, would that make this any easier? I mean, that's not a, in your mind, the 4x4s don't bother me. I think it's probably the least invasive. No
You can
equipment
run into
involved.
problems with the helicals too, if you hit
Yeah.
stone or something,
Yeah.
so,
Right.
that's. If they work, they're easier to install and they're pretty stable with minimal impact. But I'm just not comfortable like without any kind of anybody stamping this plan or anything, we're just sort of flying a little blind.
Yeah. So I think Mary's point about a lot of times the manufacturer will have an SK on these, and many times they'll provide a stamp, or what the what the span, what the weight, what the loads are allowed on it. I mean, I think we got to remember too. This is a walkway. It's not a bridge for vehicles.
Yeah.
I remember when we were up in Byfield at the solar field site, they're proposing putting in a 165-foot clear span bridge, but the landing zone was on grade and not elevated. And that wasn't, I don't recall that having any type of open grid on it. Doesn't seem practical that if this thing has to be at 4 feet above grade because it's 4 feet wide. I mean, that becomes stairs up and down. It eliminates the handicap accessibility of it all. But
I don't think it was intended to be handicap accessible.
well, it doesn't mean that we ignore that though. I mean, on the walkways on campus, the grades were met. What was the last one, Wendy, that you had walkways to wetlands?
The
And it was-
pedestrian walkway
Yeah.
through the.
I mean,
through the
this
wall.
is basically what you're doing.
Yeah,
You're not eliminating a pedestrian walkway to, is it Corn Island? Is that the island that?
that's what they, yeah,
Correct.
historically it was called, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that is one reason we went with 4 feet wide. I think we could get away with 3, but if a wheelchair did want to use it, 4 feet wide would be more reasonable.
There's not a wetland delineation that is along with this either, so this is gonna start in the wetland, like it's not extending, so it's expanding across the whole wetland. And where as you approach, if I recall, there's 20 feet or so of marsh before you get to the crossing. So there's permanent impact to the marsh itself, which we can't have. It's just the consultant in me is just having a hard time making this fit into all the boxes. And so and try to help you by doing this and not having it just be bounced back. We say you need to design something, it's approved subject to receipt of a final plan that incorporates the final bank dimensions that also complies with DEP's pier and dock guidelines, then that's going to mean it's going to have to be elevated. And it's going to have to probably start from the edge of the woods and extend over. It's longer than
Yeah,
what you're
I don't
proposing,
think we,
so, yeah.
I mean, we're trying to minimize impact, so that's the whole point
Right.
behind this proposal.
But that's because if you're creating pedestrian access into the marsh, then the pedestrians themselves become the impact if the structure isn't elevated over it. So.
But
This
isn't
is
there a
one
right
of
to
the issues.
maintain an existing roadway or farm road though? I mean, I don't think that expires, does it?
I mean, not if it's become wetland. it's the resource that's present at the time you filed, regardless of what the prior use was.
Okay, so it sounds like no one has a problem with the removal of the culvert and restoring, the profile of the channel. The dilemma becomes, installing the walkway.
Mhm.
Would we consider, and again, I'm kind of spitballing here. The original request was to approve this and allow that the 4x4 posts be located. Because that was all going to be done by mosquito control. And then require as a special condition, a submittal with a drawing showing the connection over the actual walkway with the details that we've been chatting about. I mean, I guess the other thing is you get your approval on the removal and the restoration of the channel, and you need to come back with an amendment for the bridge with proper documentation. I mean, that would basically be our normal approach.
I don't think you can amend that order.
Oh, okay, because it's
Yeah, I
ecological
don't think you can amend
restoration.
it. I can double check on that, but
Could
What
they
is-
submit,
Go ahead,
could
Tom.
they submit a separate NOI for the pathway to the bridge and the bridge itself over the marsh, separate from the restoration of the culvert? In other words, do it as two different proposals.
I mean, it's always a possibility. It's just a duplication of costs and fees, time and effort.
Right.
I think
May I
that's,
ask a question?
yeah, certainly. William.
What if the footbridge became temporary? So that, called seasonal, and it was of aluminum type structure so that you wouldn't have to have the height, the 4:1 height, and it was a temporary structure that gets removed during ice, and then that way the existing farm road is there, and they just move the aluminum structure back and forth seasonally, and it doesn't have to be 4:1 because it's not going to be there when there's ice. Is that something, I know that's not what's proposed now, but if we could possibly entertain a change like that, and Wendy could scramble to come up with some stuff that needs to be done. But if it wasn't a permanent structure, it wouldn't have to meet the 4:1.
Is this ecological restoration project, is a limited ecological restoration project?
no,
Or is,
No,
okay,
it's a full, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, the reason to have these together is that, I don't know if you remember, the whole point behind this is for the students to collect before and after data for research.
Right.
So if we pull the culvert out for them to collect the data for the after, they're gonna have to wade through the stream and probably cause more damage than, putting the posts in. So, that's why we had proposed it as kind of a joint project.
Diane, what do you think?
What about, remember when they had that research station out in the Great Marsh that has like the boards that are, and then we allowed them to kind of become permanent boards because they were only boards? What project is that?
that's the
that-
Parker River Station.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh,
We have
okay.
well, they have
I
their
saw
annual
that, yeah.
report.
Actually, I
That's
saw
going to
the
be,
annual report and it
yeah.
went very well, it seems, but something like that would allow them to get out there and do their testing and everything without having to put an entire footbridge there.
That's interesting, Diane, 'cause we did that under an RDA,
Yeah. And then we
which was
extended
probably
it.
a reach. It was probably a
Yeah.
reach at that
Well,
time.
because it was temporary. It was
Yeah.
only supposed to be for 5 years, and they've extended it.
But it's a way to get the students out there on, granted it's boards, it's not like a whole footbridge, but it was in the marsh and that was allowed. So just a
Well, I
thought.
think, you know what, I think Woody has introduced an interesting idea, which is if you were to consider this temporary and for 5 years, which is what we've done before, we've done that. That was via an RDA, Mary, as I recall. On again, I'm just going by what we did at the Parker River Research Station.
I don't remember.
Yeah, it was an RDA, as I recall. It wasn't an order of conditions. That would certainly give you'd still be able to do your research. You would be
They're
able
doing
to
it.
do, you could be doing your culvert removal and channel restoration. And you have 5 years' time to decide how you want to make a permit and what permitting is required to go from a temporary to a permanent structure.
That seems reasonable. So what kind of boards are you talking about? Or could it be a dock, gangway?
You should talk to them. I don't know, but I know.
Well, they
that-
were walking out through marsh grass, so they
Oh, I
actually
see.
they had 4x4s going down with a 2x10 cross members and then 2x12 planks. That
Oh,
they
like
were
a bog
walking.
bridge?
Yeah, but it was an elevated bog bridge.
Got it.
And
There
they
was
were
a
going, it was
station.
going to be removed. What's the normal removal for temporary, for docks and piers? Is it November 15th or something?
Yeah.
Okay,
If I may,
yeah, Woody.
if it was aluminum gangway, like a 16-footer or something, you can get them with railings. I think they're very reasonably priced. They use them to get to docks on the Raleigh. I've seen a good example of one on the Raleigh River by Burley's. And it could be manhandled up out of there and moved to high ground. And it's something that you could call temporary, and it's something that it would only be a concern for, it would alleviate the concerns for ice or alleviate the concerns for elevation. It was just a thought in my mind, and it's something that everyone could safely use to get across. You wouldn't have any footings or pilings. It would sit on the grade on both sides. And you just simply yank it and haul it back down your farm road to high ground, so it's not in the marsh, so it doesn't float away and the ice doesn't affect it. But that was my thought. And I think some of those are, they're not 20 grand, they're not $100 either, but
Yeah, they're $3,500 to $4,000 probably.
it could be temporary, and it'd be a way to get out, know that your students were safe and they can get out there and back and do their research. And it was just
So-
a thought in my mind.
So it seems that if you you could consider closing out your order of conditions as proposed, and then revisit access through an RDA, more of a temporary means that could be conditioned for a number of years. And
So by temporary, do you mean that's seasonal as well as a like a short time frame? Is that,
you picture a dock and pier where you'd have to pull
Oh.
it back.
yeah,
I mean, you have equipment on site anyway. You have Bobcats, right?
yeah, I mean, that seems like a reasonable solution to me.
Will do.
Just
Yeah, go ahead, man.
I'm sorry, I'm looking over the restoration order of conditions, and there are certain categories of projects that qualify for this provision that they've applied for. They were applying under the tidal restoration provision. So the special conditions for tidal restoration projects, in addition to the other standard conditions that they list, is if a project is a culvert or bridge replacement or repair project, an as-built plan and a written statement from a registered professional engineer or other environmental professional expert in ecological restoration certifying substantial compliance with the design plans, construction specifications approved in the restoration order of conditions shall be submitted within 90 days of completion. The as-built plan shall include the dimensions of the structure, the invert elevation of the upstream and downstream ends of the structure. In this case, you're removing the structure, and the road or other surface elevation above the structure. The applicant shall monitor pre and post tidal conditions upstream and downstream of the tidal restriction with water level recordings measured at an interval no greater than every 10 minutes over a minimum of 1 week period that includes spring tide. Pre and post construction water level readings shall be taken at approximately the same location, and shall be referenced to the same vertical elevation datum. The applicant shall prepare a report detailing the results of this monitoring within 12 months after construction is complete. The report shall include and compare pre and post construction tidal elevation monitoring data to assess attainment of the project's predicted post restoration tidal conditions. So sounds like you have done that. I don't know if you have it referenced to a tidal datum, your pre.
Yeah, that was several years ago. I did talk with Mason about that, and we were kind of thinking that that would be only if we put a new culvert back in. I mean, we're completely eliminating it. We're not repairing it. So there's no restriction at all now. So I interpreted that to mean that we would not have to follow those requirements. I mean, what do you think?
That is one way to look at it.
Okay.
No, I mean, it's because
Yeah.
it's really referring to a culvert replacement, bridge replacement, or repair. That's what the category you're filing under is tidal restoration, but those activities are a little different.
Mhm.
That would
So
be for
trying to
a
put
permit, would that be,
round
would
peg
that
in a
be,
square hole here.
that would
Yeah.
be for a permanent structure?
Yeah,
That was
guess-
my understanding,
It
yeah.
seems like that's what they're referring to.
Okay.
So I don't know. I'm just hung up on the bridge itself and how to mitigate. You know, it's not just crossing the channel, it's crossing the wetland, approaching the channel. What happens beyond the bridge on that path out to the island? You know, it's on the old road. I don't know how often that would be used. It looks like it's lightly used, but still used, probably used by deer and other animals too.
Right.
So I'm more concerned with, the approach to it and people standing in the area where you're doing work, where you have a group of students. And, they're going to be mucking around as you approach this bridge. You want to make sure that that area is protected as well. So it would just be helpful to have a full design to be able to say, okay, this is what you're going to do. We can approve this. So if there's a way, if we can delay this hearing until we have that information, that would be, I think, in my mind, ideal. If you need to get started sooner than later, then we'll have to separate them and make some kind of a special condition that we're going to be asking for that information.
What was your thought, Mary, on the temporary approach that Woody had suggested, and we have approved in other areas?
Yeah, the only issue is, how impactful is it what kind of equipment do you need to get it in and out every year? And is that going to be more damaging? If it's simple, it's light, and it can be moved by, a handful of people by hand, then that's fine. But if you need to get equipment every time you need to,
Well-
you're it's going to end up causing more damage every time you have, and wear and tear on the piers and everything else.
back 15 or 20 years ago, about 3 doors down from Pearlie's Marina, there was because of the marsh condition in there, this thing was like 28 feet long, and 4 grown men picked it up and carried it off at high tide. They brought the dock in with it, detached the ramp, pulled the ramp up onto the high ground. They were on high ground at that point, and then they fastened the dock so that it wouldn't float away. And I was impressed with how lightweight this was. So if this thing's 16 feet long and 3.5 feet wide, how much could it weigh?
Yeah.
I understand the impact of the marsh, but
Somebody's got to walk through the channel or figure out how to get it across the channel.
yeah. So it just seemed like, to me, it seems like a temporary structure might seem like a way to keep things moving, and it could be revisited in the future with a time constraint on how long.
So maybe you
can
call it
have the temporary
removable.
structure. And seasonal with the ice and everything, and then you wouldn't have to have the height. If it was temporary and removable seasonally.
Well, maybe
you
we
wouldn't
could
have to worry about
condition
height.
seasonal removable walkway in the conditions. As a special condition. Where it wouldn't exceed 20 feet, wouldn't be over 4 feet wide. And it would be a seasonal, you know, like we have another pier and docks area. You know, where it's.
Again, you're
going to-
stepping into the marsh before you get to the walkway, so it's,
But I look at it, that's a roadway. We walked out it, that,
Yeah.
I didn't see that as marsh. I mean, it has grown some vegetation, but that wasn't marsh. That, I mean, it's a road. It's a farm
Well-
access road, but
The culvert was there to be driven over.
yeah.
Excuse me, the interruption, but
yeah.
No, yeah, no,
time,
listen, we're
one time, yep.
we're brainstorming on this, so.
Yep.
But Wendy, you have some options. We gotta keep moving. We have other items on the agenda tonight.
Mhm.
What would you like to do? Would you like to entertain trying to make this more a removable temporary option?
Yes, yes, I think that sounds like a good approach. I'm just not clear on whether that could be a condition to an ecological restoration order of conditions, or that would just be a separate RDA. I think either could work, given that we have a few months before students would want to be out there. I mean, I have scheduled the mosquito abatement folks for January to comply with the time of year restrictions, so if
We can throw
don't
it in
know if
there,
we-
and if there's objection to it from DEP, then we can withdraw that part of it.
yeah,
Hmm.
that makes
Good.
sense.
Hey, Diane, what do you think?
But then aren't we like drafting this and are we not supposed to be doing that? Like, we're
we can-
sort
we're-
of coming
we're-
up with how this is all gonna work and
Well,
everything.
it's all for the kids, Diane. It's all
I
for
know,
the kids.
I have nothing against it. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that, like, we
Now,
don't have
if-
anything in front of us
Let
that
me ask
shows
you a question.
the
If there were
applicant
three
asking this.
17-year-olds saying we want to do this, that would be, well,
I know, I just think
No,
we're planning it.
I see what Diana's saying is we
no,
don't,
no, you're
have the
not wrong,
request.
Diane. You're not
Yeah.
wrong.
And then if DEP comes back, it's like, well, where did the plan for, like, what the applicant didn't ask for this? Like,
Mhm.
where?
Well, no, it's going to be her request that it will make it a special condition, accommodating her request. Or we're just
Okay.
going to approve this as it's presented without any type of a walkway. I don't want to call it a dock or a bridge. It's an access. It's a bog mat spanning, likely probably a 10 or 12-foot span when you're done, but.
I want to do it. I'm just saying there's nothing in front of us that shows that.
Diane, you're being a lawyer is starting to
I
shine
know,
through, which
I
is
know, sorry.
why we appreciate your. So,
So
All
what
right,
if
so-
I kind of regroup and submit something in writing for the commission to consider at their next meeting? Does that work?
you're just gonna run out of time for January where that,
Yeah,
10 business days,
right.
holidays, although you got holidays right now anyway, but, our next meeting is what, the January 7th.
Yeah. Would the
So-
commission be ready to approve the notice of intent without the walkway?
Yeah,
Or
I
was
don't,
that,
from what I'm hearing, I think we would entertain that, but we haven't. I think the concern right now is everyone's supportive, from what I'm observing, of the restoration effort. And what you're
Mhm.
doing, it improves the resource. The hangup is what impact, if any, does this access back to Corn Island have on the
Yeah.
resource?
Yeah.
Do we
mean,
want to consider, Mary, a special condition that the applicant will submit an SK, a drawing or whatever we want to call it on a removable temporary walkway going over the former culvert area. And then if, I mean, DEP may kick it back, or. But I mean, I think I think Woody's comment about it being temporary and removable. So,
Yep.
Yeah,
Matt, go ahead, Nick.
no, I was just gonna say, rather than use the term temporary, I would
Removable.
suggest using seasonal. Might be the proper terminology.
Okay, well. How do we want to wordsmith? I think, let me go back. Does anyone have any other questions or require any other information on the actual culvert removal or the channel restoration?
One question, Wendy, is there going to be any replanting or anything like that afterwards? Are you proposing any restoration or just restore grade and let the grass grow in on its own? There's no replanting plan or anything like that proposed?
No, the
Okay.
plan was, I mean, I think we will do some bank stabilization of the area if they do put native material back on that scoured area, but we were not planning on planting anything.
Let's close, let's see if we can get to a point what the remaining issue is. So the culvert removals, we have no further information. We don't require any further information. The channel restoration, gonna be the native material or the rubble is gonna be hauled off. And that's been clear. So are we comfortable with that aspect of the submittal? Does anyone have any requests for any additional information or further documentation on that aspect of it?
No.
Okay, so hearing none, the remaining issue is, can we issue a special condition on a seasonal ramp or walkway?
I think we should word it carefully so that it's clear that it's for educational purposes,
Right.
for one
Seasonal,
school, right?
seasonal walkway.
Seasonal research
the-
walkway.
Exactly.
There you go.
I'm like, we're gonna find out if we can do this, I think.
Mhm. And then, the exact dimensions to be determined upon
Yeah,
completion.
to be submitted to the
Prior to
agent,
construction.
it's
yeah.
submitted to the agent or commission for pre-approval prior to construction. Isn't that how we usually word these things?
Agent
Good.
or commission or just agent?
Well, it's either agent or the commission, because the agent could say, this is more than I thought, and it's usually either or. And it
Let's pick
usually
it.
becomes,
Pick Mason.
okay. All right, well, I think we can discuss this special condition if we entertain closing the public hearing of the special conditions. I think we can hammer that out. So let me ask, are there any members from the public that would like to comment at this time? Okay, hearing none. Do any members have a request for a site visit, additional information, plan amendment, or adding additional content to the notice of intent?
Nope.
No.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Is this what you want us to do? Wendy, are you?
Yes, yes,
'Cause
please.
the only thing we can address as a special condition is this removable walkway at that
Mhm.
point. Okay,
Yep.
So move.
okay, so what do you made the motion?
Yep.
Diane, you seconded?
Yes.
Okay, roll call vote, all in favor? Mary,
Yes.
Woody,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Bob Connors. Okay, now we can discuss, we've closed that out. Now we're discussing a special condition on a seasonal research walkway where final design submittal to be presented to the conservation agents and or commission prior to construction. Prior to installation.
How
'cause
about
it's
for
not-
review and approval prior to
Okay.
construction?
Okay. Okay, so seasonal research walkway. And what did you suggest now, Mary? Sorry, I was
For
writing something.
review and approval by the agent.
Review and approval by the agent.
Did we want to use the word educational? Someone at some point said that would be good.
I mean, I think research kind of covers everything. By the agent prior to installation. Does that capture our brainstorming session here?
Sounds good.
You
to
know,
me.
my ninth grade English is not shining through here tonight, by the way, but
Wendy needs to have the students draft this and get it
Yeah,
back.
I can do
Yeah,
that
but-
for us.
you know what? I'll just run this through ChatGPT and it'll be words.
That'll be awesome.
We can add tone, temperature, clarity. Okay, so I will entertain a motion to issue an order of conditions. Actually, an order of conditions for the ecological restoration project for 268 Middle Road with the following special condition. That the now I can't even read my own writing here, my God here. The seasonal research walkway to be reviewed and approved by the agent prior to installation.
Yeah, plans for, yes, the
Yeah.
plans for.
Yeah.
Exactly. I move
Okay.
to approve
Okay,
that special condition.
okay, do
Second.
we have a second?
Second,
Diane, all right. Okay, roll call vote, all in favor, Mary,
Yes,
Woody,
Yes,
Mick? Diane? Diane, did you say
Yes.
yes?
oh, yes,
Okay.
I said yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, Frank?
Yes.
And Bob Connor says yes. All right, Wendy, I think,
Thank you
We'll
very
see-
much. I
we'll
appreciate
see.
it.
okay,
Yeah.
we're so smooth.
See what
this is like,
happens.
this was like sitting in the dentist chair for 3 hours with the
Yeah.
drill running, I think. to a point.
That was easy,
But we
huh,
got to the
Wendy?
good place.
And you know what, we're all
Right.
supportive of the project and we think it's impressive to see the students participate.
Mhm.
The next generation was very impressive. Okay, thank you. Next order of business.
Thank you very much.
Continued
Ellen.
public hearing, DEP file number 0501440 337th Street. Applicant is submitting a notice of intent to renovate their existing home, including additions, decks. Plan includes a mitigation planting plan, project narrative, and site plans. Mason, can you provide an overview on this?
Yep, so this is a new project in front of us. This hasn't gone in front of zoning yet. So the zoning board wanted to make it clear that any dimensional and zoning setback comments should be heard at that meeting, which is, I believe, next week. And for further comments on this, I would just say, I think it would be good for the applicant and their consultant to address existing vegetation on the property, as well as dune integrity, as this is on a primary dune.
Okay. Mason, were there any technical comments from the department on this one?
I have not checked. I can look into that right now.
There wasn't
It-
today.
Okay. All right,
Haven't
is the
heard.
applicant or his consultant here and want to make a presentation?
Yes, good evening.
Oh,
Tom
Tom.
Hughes. With Hughes Environmental Consulting. I'm just trying to wake up after that last one.
Wasn't
Hey,
exciting.
So,
hey, Tom, we talked about cinder blocks on another
entertaining.
project.
I'm just kidding. No, so I'm here on behalf of Sue and Tom Costigan, the owners of 337th Street. It's the property that is just north of where Doc Russo's house was, if that makes for those of you guys who've been on the island for a while. If it's okay, I'd like to share my screen and go through a presentation. From a Wetland Protection Act point of view, I will note this is actually a relatively simple project. So the property, as Mason noted and as noted in my narrative, the project site is on a primary frontal dune. It's actually a fairly large lot, a little bit over a half acre. These are the assessor's lines that, we have a survey plan in the file that actually has the actual surveyed lines. There's a large parking area, an existing building, and an entrance down onto the dune. You can see there's some area of very sparse vegetation over in this area, and you can see from this aerial photograph areas in here, and we'll get into that a little bit more, that are lacking some vegetation. Here's the location. It's located on Plum Island, which is a barrier beach. It's also located within the velocity zone, but it's located within the velocity zone because of its location within the primary frontal dune. The elevations of where the house is are actually pretty high, but as I think the commission is aware, under the FEMA definitions, any primary frontal dune is considered velocity zone. I believe that extends back through multiple sites in this area. The eastern portion of the half is mapped within natural heritage. Because of that, this application was sent in for an endangered species review. We actually received that letter yesterday. They have issued a clean letter. I'll talk about that, but they are recommending some conditions that would need to be attached to the order. And seeing as they're actually requiring it, we're just going to ask the commission to do that. You can see this is the velocity zone, VE elevation 16. You can also see this line here. That actually represents where FEMA has mapped the back edge of the primary frontal dune in this section of Plum Island, and you can see our location right here. Here's the existing house, the parking area. This is actually Doc Russo's old garage here. And this is 37th Street. This also becomes a footpath to get out to the beach. And you can see the existing house has a deck here that actually has stairs that come down and direct people sort of towards the ocean, although there are some walkways that take them back over to the path. But it has led to some trampling in this area. This is a view from the south, again, kind of showing the same things. The parking area is in a shadow. That's why I kind of showed you that other view, but you can better see this area here where it's relatively devoid of vegetation. And it looks like in the past, folks maybe have taken a shortcut through to get to the beach on this walking path, in addition to this walking path. So I need to move you guys out of the way so I can scroll around a bit here. All right, so here are some photos. One of the things that's really impressive on this site is the ability of vegetation to be growing underneath some of the existing decks there. And including in this area here where there's lattice that's fairly solid, there's still pretty good vegetation growing right behind it underneath. And that is largely because this is an east-facing lot. There's nothing providing any shadow from the east. Here's a picture of the building. You can see these sand areas that are here. Sand areas here, sand areas here, the stairs coming down. And in here, just kind of some wispy vegetation. This is on the north side of the house, and there is a walkway along the grade in here. Where there is foot traffic that runs along the side of the house itself. The house itself is on a solid foundation. So the reason I say this is relatively simple from a conservation point of view is that while there are some additions to the house, they're generally within the existing footprint. The expansion is really kind of squaring off some decks, reorienting the decks. One of the things that really will have a longer term beneficial effect on the dune is the reorienting the access here down towards the path to the beach, so that your foot traffic is going to just naturally want to go this way, as opposed to come out and kind of hang out here and make its way. It doesn't mean that people won't walk through the property at all, but it does have a beneficial effect of just changing the foot traffic patterns here. So here are some existing and proposed elevations, so you can see. So we're adding additional deck, a second level of deck, but we have on the deck, there will be no lattice. We're going to leave this wide open. And for areas underneath the deck, there are going to be some areas that we will plant vegetation. And I think we have a good chance of it growing. You can see, again, here's that area where I showed you a picture. There's lattice and there's vegetation actually growing right up to the building back behind here. That is all going to be opened up, the new stairway coming down, and that gives us the opportunity to also plant some of those areas. Here's another elevation view. Again, existing, sorry, it just jumped. Existing with some lattice, proposed without lattice. And again, it's kind of the same thing. Here are some pictures of the existing house that I think kind of show you that lattice pretty well and its context within the landscape. So here's what's proposed. We are proposing to redo these decks on the eastern, northern sides, and a little bit on the southern side, and then plant.
Can you enlarge that, please?
Yes, absolutely. We'll be planting some areas that we've identified that are sand in this area here, planting underneath the leading edge of the decks here, and then planting this kind of area that's been scarred from people coming down those stairs, and just having an impact in that area as well. And this is the work here that triggered the Natural Heritage Review. None of our work on the building is within endangered species. It's our mitigation work that is as well. We're removing some wooden walkways that are at grade. So now you come down the stairs, there will be, footpaths that just bring you right onto the path to the beach. So from a conservation point of view, it's really just some relatively small impact from the deck footprints, and we fully mitigate that, but we're also recognizing that there's a vegetation growing underneath the current deck structures and looking to replace vegetation in those areas that we can under the structures. So the other thing is, I noted we're in the VE16. The grades of the land here are pretty much all above 16. I think we have a little bit below 16 right in this corner. You can see a grade shot here of 16.2, in the street 15.6. So it's not the elevation that's making this velocity zone, it's the primary frontal dune location. And essentially the way that works is the FEMA assumption is that primary frontal dunes can erode and can leave you with a structure subject to flooding. In this case, the new decks will all be pile supported. The work on the building does not trigger the substantial improvement rules, so it will remain with the existing foundation. You know, again, the sort of upward additions on the house itself are not something that is really an alteration under either the Wetland Protection Act or under the bylaw. The work that is pretty straightforward, and we mitigate for all impacts. There is a table of impacts that is on the site plans, and now that I'm zoomed out, I have to just scroll around and find it, but I'll. So here we've got our total area. We have existing vegetation 19,940 and proposed is 20,237. And the existing dune grass under decks is 342. We propose to try to maintain that at 344. Now, when I say it's 342 square feet, any place where we have vegetation that's more or less 1 to 2 feet on center, we're counting that for the purpose of that existing calculation. Just because in my view, if it meets my planting standard for putting dune grass in, I should count it as vegetated on the other side. We will be planting 1 foot on center for the dune grass in those areas. So, you know, with that, we're removing some of the wood walkways. We're planting a bunch of sand. We are increasing deck coverage, but it's all mitigated for, we're improving dune function. The primary frontal dune is significant to flood, but you know, really in my view, all dunes really are anyway. And what we're doing here is marginally improving the ability of the dune to provide those functions through the plantings, especially in that area that is east of the building. And all of the impacts that we're having are fairly, you know, limited to an area that is immediately adjacent to a building with a solid foundation. So the dune function in those areas is somewhat limited regardless. So with that, I guess what I'd like to do is open it up to the commission for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Tim. All right, questions from the members. Mary, questions for Tom on this project?
Yeah, I had a chance to take a look at this site before the last meeting, and my question really is primarily the existing house is on a full foundation or some kind of
Yeah. Yep.
cinder blocks or something. Okay.
Yes.
And how was, I know we've been through this before with other projects, but how was it determined that this is not a substantial improvement? Just
So,
I understand
I
what,
mean,
because I know there's other work besides the decks that's being proposed to improve the home.
yeah, I mean, so there's FEMA definitions of that and building code definitions, and Scott Brown is the architect, and I believe he's had discussions with the building inspector. And when you look at that, there are a number of different triggers for substantial improvement. The most commonly looked at one is an issue of the dollar value of the work being done versus the dollar value of the structure itself. I don't have that information. I've just been assured by Scott that they've gone through that, you know, just those discussions with the building inspector. And if you go back, and if we go back to that kind of architectural view of what's happening, you know, there is work happening on the house, but you know, this is not the kind of thing that you look at and it says, okay, you're totally renovating everything and the cost is automatically going to exceed 50%. So that would be a determination made by the building inspector.
Yeah, so I would recommend, so since this is an issue of compliance with our local bylaw that we are administering, I would recommend that we get a letter from the building inspector saying that this project does not trigger, you know, is not a substantial, fall under the substantial improvement category, which would then require the whole structure to be elevated. to meet
Right.
existing flood standards. So that my one comment is I think that we need to have that as part of the record to make our determination and not just rely on, well, doesn't look like it would be. We should probably have something more substantial on the record. There's a zoning issue that you had mentioned. It's before ZBA.
Well, it's before ZBA because on Plum Island in the overlay district, if you increase height or lot coverage, you trigger the PIOD. So it's just a special permit.
And do you know if that's been scheduled for hearing yet?
I believe it's next week.
Next week, okay. And then I agree that natural heritage comments that we received should be part of any order of conditions. And that's all. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Woody, any comments for Tom? Any questions for Tom? Excuse me.
No, thank you, Bob. I don't have any comments or questions at the time. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Mick, any comments, questions on this
Not this
project?
Thank you. What's up?
Okay, Diane, any comments or questions on this project?
No, I mean, we've talked about this whole substantial improvement situation before, and I thought we weren't allowed to sort of question it if that wasn't our wheelhouse.
It's right in our bylaw.
I mean, that's sort of, I just know that we've come up against this before, and then it's like, is it up to us to determine? I'm
We're
totally in
not the, you
agreement.
know what, we're not the determining factor of the building. The zoning enforcement officer is the building commissioner.
So Mary, you're just,
I'm just saying we need something from somebody saying that they've complied with this provision of our bylaw.
Right. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
not making the determination. We're
Yeah.
just asking for,
They do in
confirmation.
Newburyport. The Conservation Commission in Newburyport has, they look at, the economics of the project and make a determination. The Conservation Commission does. I know
Yeah, and I don't
they're
think
a
that
little
was
out
the
over their
problem.
skis. They're out
Yeah.
over their skis on that with the state building code.
Yeah,
preamble,
so-
but-
But I'm comfortable if it's just a letter from,
Yeah, no, actually, I
Building
think, you know what, I think that's a good policy just to have in the future on this.
Mhm.
I totally agree, Mary. I'm not disagreeing. I agree with that, but it's just, yeah, if we become the people that are determining if it's substantial or not, and if it's cumulative and, all that, it gets kind of crazy. So, yeah,
Well,
I
like I say,
agree.
it's, we're not qualified, it's outside our jurisdiction.
Yep.
Yeah.
To make the determination, but once it's made, then obviously it triggers another step for us in the requirements, so.
Yeah. And we don't-
Mr. Chairman, if I may, in the past, this commission, in various iterations and various memberships, has conditioned projects to require prior to the beginning of construction, a letter from the building inspector be provided that confirms that it's not a substantial improvement, and we would not object to that.
Okay, Diane,
And-
any other questions? Diane?
No, the national heritage, we would just get into that in the next step when we get into the condition.
Yeah, I mean, you know what, that would normally be, we'd require a construction barrier protecting, that priority habitat during construction. And the
Yeah.
planting would have to be done off-season to, probably prior to April 1 and after August 31st or something like that, whatever,
we can just
whatever's
attach
in the letters.
We can just attach the
Just,
letter.
okay, reference the letter as the special
And just
condition.
attach it as part of the order. Yep.
Okay.
That was my question, just Tom didn't mention what the conditions were, but whatever they were, we will do
Yeah.
that.
That came
the
in,
next
it's,
step.
it's in the Dropbox now, Diane. It came in
Oh,
late
okay.
today. So you.
Yeah,
can-
I've just put them up on the screen.
Okay, good enough.
So, it's the same one. I know the chair has found some of this objectionable about the closing of the beach for marking off of plovers and all that, but applicants are in a position where this is their MISA permit, and if it doesn't get worked into the order of conditions, it does put them at jeopardy. So I think we would just ask that you attach it to the order.
Okay.
Some serious constitutional issues to these
Yeah,
requirements,
but
by the way. yeah.
that's
As I
my
put on
beach.
another hat in my life.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the applicant's decision. Okay,
Mhm.
anything else, Diane?
Nope.
And I
Frank.
will note, the Sue with her
Tom, will
hand
you hold,
raised.
Tom, please
Oh.
hold off.
Okay,
Frank, are there any questions on this one? Let me finish my questions and answer what's proposed here, if you would.
No,
Thank
I have
you.
no questions, Bob. Thank you.
Okay. So, Tom, what are you doing on your you're doing driven pilings for direct supports, or are you going with diamond piers, or what do you?
Well, it wouldn't be diamond piers. Diamond piers are not an appropriate, it's not appropriate to use them in a landform that FEMA determines could wash away or move dramatically. So
So are you driving
in a primary
pilings?
frontal dune, yeah, it would be it's going to be either helical or driven, and I believe
Okay.
it's going to be helical is the current
Okay.
plan. And I do want to just notice the Sue with her raised hand, I believe, is Sue Costigan, the applicant. So I just wanted to note that to you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry to
Okay.
interrupt you.
Yeah, okay. All right. Sue, what comments do you want to make before we open this up to the public for comments?
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to mention two things. First of all, it's my understanding that we're before the zoning board on this Thursday, the 19th, not next week. So if anyone's interested in that meeting, it's this week, not next week. And secondly, just to reassure you that the reason we don't have a letter for you from the building department in Newbury is because we've been postponed so many times with zoning. We're actually seeing them for the second time this week. So once we're finished with them, then we can complete our plans, and then we would be able to show that we were within the correct financial limits for our project. So things are a little bit out of sync.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Anything else before I move on?
No, thanks.
Okay, great. All right, any of the members have any follow-up questions for Tom at this time before I open this up to the public?
No.
Okay, any raised hands from the public at this time? Mason, do you have? If you could step up to the podium and just give us your name and your address, and then ask whatever questions you may have.
Just have to speak up a little. No, you can do it right there. Just speak up a little.
Allison Pike, 122 Northern Boulevard. I'm on the west side of the project.
Okay, good
Do
evening.
have a few questions for the applicant. There wasn't a lot of information, detailed information in the projects that were shared with the abutters. So maybe these have been covered off with the committee, but as abutters, we have some questions. One of the questions is, how far is the deck being extended onto the dune? There weren't any measurements or indications of the measurements of the overall increase in the deck size or how far it extends into the dune. It looks relatively small in those flat drawings, but when you overlay the rendering over the actual picture of the building, it looks like it extends quite a bit further than the current deck. So I'd like to understand what are we adding onto this deck over the dune?
Tom, can you answer that question?
Yes. So hold on, let me reshare a screen. Okay, so when you're looking towards the ocean, I don't know if you can see these lines. This is the kind of existing deck line and the stairs down.
Mhm.
And the proposed deck line is squaring this off in this area. So in this area, it's extending, further, and in other areas, it's pretty much within that deck line. It's not a tremendous.
I guess I'm asking instead of the vagueness, what is the measurement of the deck extension?
Yeah, no, I hear you. So in terms of let me just pull up my measuring tool here.
Can you turn off the layer that's showing the vegetation, Tom? I think that might.
No,
no.
unfortunately, I can't. This is a PDF.
Oh, okay, good.
So the plan scale, I believe, is I'll just double check this. I believe it's a 10, but we'll double check that in a second. So it's 0.28. And from this corner, right, where it's at its closest, and then the proposed
The one
is-
at 20, Tom.
Yeah, okay, so it's 20. So that would be, it's currently at 0.28 and a 20 scale, it's about 6 feet. And it's going to be 10 feet in that area.
So 6 foot by 10 foot to the east, and what about to the north side?
So the current building and deck thing, let me back this out a bit. This appears to be sorry, my memory on my computer is a little wonky, so it's that appears to be about a 4-foot extension in that area. But let me just make sure that I'm actually measuring real addition. I want to go to that architectural overview. So yeah, so this is the existing deck outline. So you can see what we're doing is we're coming out just shy of where the existing deck is here, but just extending that out further. And
Yeah, I
and we're
totally
coming
agree.
out 4 feet from the existing deck on the north side.
4 feet, okay. And similar questions on the extension on that west addition that you'll be putting in, and how, if that will impact the current parking or not. Reason I bring it up at this meeting and not just the zoning board meeting is we've had some issues with parking at that location in the past where the tenants had to park on 37th Street next to the house, blocking the path, the footpath to the beach, and people walk around and go onto the dune to get to the beach. So I want to understand the impacts of the current parking situation.
So
We already have
as it
a situation at the time, so I want to make sure it's being addressed.
as it says right here, the new footprint at first and second floor levels is in the existing deck location. So there's no footprint.
It doesn't extend further than that second story deck does currently.
Nope.
So no impact to parking. Okay. And then the other question that's applicable to this board is what will be planted as part of the dune mitigation? What types of plants do you plan on planting?
It's American beach grass, 1 foot on center.
Okay, in all the locations.
Yes.
I think that's all my questions for this. I have some questions for the zoning board meeting, but I think that's all I have for this meeting.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would like to ask questions or make comments? Yeah, just come on up and just give us your name and address and address your questions if you to Tom Hughes or to the commission.
Nancy Richardson, 439th Street, Newbury, Mass.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening. Just for the extension of the decks, for the pilings that you are using, how is that going to affect the buildings around? Are we going to have great vibrations? How is that going to damage, or what is the impact to the ground going to actually be?
How they get installed.
And how is the actual installation of them?
So most likely these are going to be helical piles and they're spun into the ground. And keep in mind that we're right up against this house, which is a cinder block foundation. So if there's going to be a house that would be damaged, it would be this house. Even if we were to do wooden piles or steel piles, they would be vibrated in, and I have stood a foot, 2 feet away from these piles when they've gone in the ground. And, you feel the ground shake a little bit, but it doesn't do any harm. If it were to be something other than helical piles, the pile driver's insurance company drives a sort of a process they go through where they do a pre-installation assessment of the area. And in order to protect themselves under their insurance policies, they document conditions and of nearby structures, and they set limits, and they measure at the property line if there is any risk of a vulnerability. Again, in this case, I believe these are all going to be helical, so they'll be spun in, and there'll be no impact. Piles are installed all over Plum Island all the time, with really, you hardly ever hear of any detrimental effect.
So these helical piles are not gonna damage any of the buildings right around 337th.
Yeah, no, I mean, they just screw into the ground. You wouldn't even notice it if you're standing 5 feet away.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak from the
Yes.
public? Yep, come on up and just give us your name, address, and address your question to either the commission or to Tom Hughes.
Jim Flaws, number 539th Street, Newbury. One of the questions for him was they're gonna plant these things every foot on center. Everything that's been growing there has been growing like forever. Once as they're planted, who is gonna, make sure that they're actually growing and spreading and not just gonna die? And during the construction, they shut things down due to the wildlife. You can't go to the beach, you can't go on the dunes, and everything else. When is this construction gonna be taking place, at what time of the year?
All right.
So I'll answer the question on to the survivability of the planting. If we issue an order of conditions, the applicant has to come back to seek a certificate of compliance. At that time, the commission does a site inspection on the viability of the planting. And usually it's a minimum of a 1-year growing period. Sometimes it's been conditioned to 2 years. So that's on the survivability. We won't issue a certificate of compliance unless there is typically a 70% survivability.
75, yep.
75. And Tom, you want to answer the other question, time of year on following the
Yeah,
NEPA
sure.
letter?
So we've actually been through an endangered species review. They've issued a letter and they've issued proposed conditions. There are no time of year restrictions on the work that's proposed. So we will not be subject to that because we're just barely in habitat, and where we are, it's planting. All of the equipment operation, et cetera, is not happening within habitat. And so there are no restrictions in terms of time of year. The time of year for this work to get done, it depends in large part on when do we have all our approvals in hand? When do we get all our, contractor costs, our framing plans and everything done? And that will really drive things. And once the work is done enough so that all the work is off the ground and more or less inside the house, then we can start looking at when the next favorable planting season, whether it's a fall or a spring plant. And that would be done. And as the chair said, the plantings have to really be demonstrated to be surviving and doing well before they'll sign off on the permit. And the commission's permit is an order of conditions. It's actually filed at the Registry of Deeds against the property and acts as a lien on the property until it's released through that commission sign off.
Okay, just seems like, there was a bigger deal made out of that bridge going on than what's going on over here. This looks like a major project.
All these projects are major and that you live next door to them. It's, I mean, typically what we're gonna require is that the applicant or the
Trying to
owner.
raise my hand.
Yeah, no, I
Ask
see
about these 500 plantings. Are they included in the mitigation?
Oh, okay.
I mean, it might help.
Okay, if I can finish my comment, then we can continue. So we're gonna require typically a construction barrier where the footprint of the work area, they're gonna put up a snow fence or some sort of other orange barrier so that equipment can't just wander into the priority habitat. Tom, do you show that on the plan already?
Yes,
Okay,
it's shown right here.
all right. Diane, do you have a question?
No, I'm sorry, Bob. I thought I was muted. Excuse
Oh,
me.
okay. Hey.
I just had a question about the 500 additional plantings in the area there closer to 39th Street. That's not part of the mitigation, or is it?
So that was something, it is something that we're proposing as part of our planting, but I can't really say that that area is not vegetated. So it's not an area. I'm not taking credit for square footage over there. But if we go back, and this is something, you know, we don't have to do, but in my view, as somebody, you know, who does coastal geology and is looking at dune health, I look at these aerial photographs and, you know, I look at them on the conditions in the ground. But there's been some dune grass die off in this area. Sometimes that happens from trampling, sometimes that happens from nematode infestations. And, you know, my recommendation would be we throw some American beach grass in there just to try to get some established. And it's just, we don't have to do it to meet the performance standards. I just think it's the right thing to do. And I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that, but that was, you know, that was one of those things that, you know, I'm trying to improve the dune function for my client's property in a way that is protective of them and protective of the general area.
Okay. I see Lisa Pratt has her hand raised. Lisa, hang on one second. Diane, do you have any other questions before I go to Lisa?
No, and again, excuse me for before.
No, it was a very good question. Lisa, just give us your name and address and then address your questions to either the commission or to Tom as you choose.
Okay, Lisa Pratt, 124 Northern Boulevard. And I had a couple of questions about the whole process of removal of the old deck on the northern side of the property. How big are the pilings going to be? How deep will they run? And how big is the equipment that's going to remove the deck, put the pilings in, and frame out the new deck? And how disruptive is that going to be to the dune structure that sits right in front of our house and Allison Pike's house?
Okay, so to answer that, in terms of the equipment, that will be determined by the contractor who's doing the installation. Typically, helical piles don't require a large or as large a piece of equipment as perhaps if we were driving piles to support a full-on building. But we have developed this limit of work to accommodate any equipment. And basically, when we do these limits of work, this would be the area that would be limited to the disruption from equipment. It's a fairly tight limit of work to the building and any areas within that. So our plan is we plant this as mitigation, but if we damage dune grass in this area, that gets replanted. So when we come in for a certificate of compliance from the commission, they will make sure that the areas that were dune grass when we started are dune grass, and the areas that we said will be dune grass are dune grass.
So Tom, you might be replacing the dune grass, but what happens to the erosion of the dune while these pieces of equipment are in there doing the work?
First of all, it's unlikely there's any erosion of a dune. Dunes don't erode from water or things like that. They do move around with wind. And if the sand is, moved around, it's possible there's some minor windborne movement, but the largest areas for wind movement are up in here. I looked around for signs of regular sand movement in this area, and it's basically non-existent. In this area, it tends, as you get closer to the building, it tends to drop off pretty quickly because the building creates a buffer to the windborne. A temporary disturbance as part of a construction project is something that happens with every construction project on Plum Island, and it's something that is allowed within the regs, and it's routinely part of the closeout of these projects is to make sure that we've essentially healed the dune during that process.
Lisa, do you have any other questions?
I feel like I interrupted you when you were
Oh,
in the
no, no.
process of answering
no,
my
no.
questions, but, I guess just some questions about how big are the pilings? How deep is this going to go into the ground? I'm concerned that it will be disruptive and that we have had our house flood previously, and this is going to contribute to the possibility that that could happen again.
Okay, I think Tom answered the question on the pilings. Helical pilings are typically 8 inches, 12 inches in diameter, Tom, and they're installed with a bobcat that has a rotary attachment, and it screws in like a corkscrew, and it goes down to a certain depth of refusal, which is typically what, 5 feet?
So if I could interrupt, Bob, there is a steel profile plan that was included with the record in our
Okay.
Dropbox that shows
Oh,
steel piles.
yeah.
There we go.
So they're
No, thank you.
4x4 posts on steel piles, and they show depth. So, and all this information, just for the neighbors, is available electronically. It's public record, and you're welcome to ask the agent to forward you copies of all these plans so that you can take a look at them.
But Mary, thank you for pointing that out. I was under the impression that we were leaning towards helical, but even these these are going to be H-pile that are driven into the ground, and they're driven to a point of refusal. There is a depth shown, but basically they're driven to through a vibratory means. It happens all the time on Plum Island. It doesn't affect area water levels. It doesn't affect flooding, and it happens very near structures. So unless there is already a structural flaw in a nearby structure, there's really minimal risk. But and that's all. The pile driver comes in with his equipment, and they go through that process. They're insured, they're bonded, they go through the pre-pile survey to make sure there are no structures at risk before they actually start putting the piles in the ground.
Okay, Lisa, any additional questions?
I guess my other question is, to put these pilings in, are they staying within the footprint of the property, or are they going outside onto the dune structure?
You saw the previous plan that showed the limit of work. So, and that's what it,
I thought there were screw pilings before.
you will see that it's predetermined the limit of work where equipment or the workmen are going to be able to allow to go.
The plan shows the location of the
Yeah.
piers.
Yeah.
So you see the little dots on the green. If you blow it up, you could see the location of proposed piers.
Okay, so they will be outside the scope of the house, the present home.
They're well,
Yeah.
those are the piles, looks like, supporting the deck. There may be other structural. I don't think you need them that deep for the deck, do you? Oh, there's this 2-story deck. That's okay.
Yeah, it's 2-story deck and here as well. Keep in mind, Mary, that when the piles go in, this is velocity zone map primary frontal dune, so there's a scour element to the depth.
Yep.
Sometimes they go in deeper than you would typically think they go, because we have to calculate for the FEMA purposes that they would survive a certain amount of scour.
Although the foundation wouldn't.
Right. No, I mean, that's the silly thing, is we're going to have a
Yeah.
deck that is designed to withstand a 100-year event surrounding a house that's built of cinder blocks.
So I think Mary brought up a good point for the members of the public that are present. Everything that you're watching tonight is available if you reach out to Mason Ferrick, our agent, and you can either go down and get copies of it, or he can electronically send you copies of this. Do we have any new concerns and new questions at this time.
I have a quick question for Tom. Why was he talking, we were gonna do the spiral things and all of a sudden Mary brings up that they're pounding them now? How come he didn't just say we're pounding them right off the beginning?
Well, it's just, in all honesty, I do a million projects, and on this one, I know we had had some earlier discussions about whether we were doing driven steel, and by driven, they're vibrated in, or helical, and sometimes we get to the building inspector and those things change. And Mary pointed out something that I should have just flipped one more page and I would have reminded myself. So I was not trying in any way to mislead. And as I was trying to leave the door open for both types because, it's still possible we go to the building inspector and he leans us, towards a helical. But vibrated, steel piles, they go in all the time on Plum Island on just about every project that you see. And
Both are allowed, by
Yeah.
the way. So that mean it is an either or choice for the applicant and the contractor.
It just seems like there's bigger equipment when I've seen these things used when they're driving them versus the Bobcat spins them in.
Well, that's correct on if they're driving piles, it is a bigger piece of equipment, but it is still limited to the area of work that's been defined on the plan.
I was just thinking of environmental issues with bigger equipment, that's all.
Yeah, again, that's why there's a limit of work on the plan where that it is to minimize the impact of the resource, which also minimizes the restoration to the resource after construction is concluded.
It also has a longer boom, so it can reach over a wider area. These steel piles.
Any other question?
Yes, just comment, Allison Beck at 122 Northern Boulevard. The abutting neighbors did their due diligence by coming to the town and asking for plans. We didn't see a lot of this information, and a lot of the details weren't in there accessible to us, is why we have so many questions tonight. We did do
Oh, yeah,
everything
no,
due diligence,
listen,
asked for information.
that's hence why we have a public hearing to, to provide this, platform for parties of interest, to participate and gather information.
Yeah, Mr.
Okay.
Chair, I will note there are two hard copies, full hard copies of everything that has been brought up on the screen tonight at Town Hall, and there's also electronic copies, which I believe are in your
Dropbox.
Dropbox.
Yeah, so, yeah, again, I would just suggest that if you'd like to get copies of the documents you've seen tonight, just reach out to the agent and he should be able to assist you. You can either view them in person at Town Hall, or likely they could be sent to you electronically so you could view them on your own computer.
I had one more question. When you guys do site work or visit the site, are we allowed to meet with you at the same time and explain any concerns that might come around?
I'm not sure what your
Site
question is.
visit. Yeah,
Yeah.
will we do a site visit? I think is what he's asking.
Yeah, I'm gonna want to see a site visit. I'm not familiar with this site, so I'm gonna want to see a site visit before I make any further determination on this. Again, site visits is something that the commission requests. It is private property. It doesn't mean that you have access to the property during the site visit. As we have learned in the past from other site visits, so.
Subject to the landowner's permission,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Tom can check to see if whether or not that would be allowed or not.
But I would think you live in the area, you kind of know the topography of the property. There's no proposed grade changes that I'm aware of. And there is going to be planting done, to further buffer the resource.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, do any of the members have any questions at this time? All right, do any members have requests for a site visit? Yes, I'd like to see the site. Additional information, plan amendment, or adding additional content to the notice of intent.
I would just request that if there is a site visit, that the corners of the deck be staked out.
Okay. Is anyone else interested in a site visit besides Juan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yes,
but-
Bob, I'd like to.
okay.
take a look.
All right, so Tom, we're gonna request a site visit.
Yep.
Sounds like you get the ZBA on Thursday that may kind of work to your advantage, that this gets continued. You should request a continuation or consider a continuation to the January 7th meeting. And then if any ZBA issues arise, you have the ability to address some of them.
Okay, so if we're gonna do a site visit, we do have holidays next week. But I would like to try to make sure we get it in before the 7th, so we can come in and close
Oh,
out
yeah,
on the
certainly.
7th.
Yeah. So let's just looking at the calendar. Well, why don't we do this? You're going to request are you requesting a continuance to January 7th?
If you're requesting a site visit, then
Yeah,
yeah, I
we
don't
are-
want
we
to,
are
I
doing-
don't want to go beyond the 7th. So if you're looking for that, then let's take a look at what the calendar looks like between now and then.
Well, what I want to do is, I would like to continue the public hearing and then we'll schedule the site visit prior to the next meeting,
All right, that's fine.
okay? Okay, so at the applicant's request, I'll entertain a motion to continue the public hearing to the January 7th, 2025 meeting.
So move.
Second.
Okay. Okay, roll call, all in favor? Mary,
Yes,
Woody,
Yes.
Mick,
Aye.
Diane,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes,
and Bob Connors. All right.
Right. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, hang on one second though, Tom,
Yeah.
if you want, just, let's just get the calendars that, what I didn't want was the public still, hanging on. Public hearing has been continued.
Right.
The
Okay.
only it's gonna be discussed now is the site visit.
Okay.
So today is the 17th. I mean, a week from Thursday, the 26th of December, who's traveling, I guess, is Diane, of course you're traveling.
Be
Little
here
jet
after
setter you.
Christmas,
Um,
but I'll be back the next week.
Okay, or do we want to try to do it this week? The 19th?
If you want the corners staked,
Yeah, I think that
Um,
would be good.
I don't know. I mean, I think the surveyor can probably do it pretty quick, but it may not be done if we try this week.
I mean, I think too, Tom, just being realistic, the corners, you've got a you got a concrete foundation,
You can
masonry
measure
foundation.
by
You
hand.
Yeah,
just-
no, it can be taped off.
You put some beam poles in there, I think you could do that.
Right.
Uh,
So this week, Thursday is, it would have to be earlier in the day. I have,
Well, 8 o'clock in the morning would be likely what we would, is typically when we try to do those.
yeah, and I actually, yeah, and I've also got, as I think you probably know, the, sand is going on the beach in Salisbury and I've got to be out there every day during that. So if we do 8, that's actually going to be, helpful. And, separately, I just want to extend if Mason wants to do a site visit to a large nourishment project, the opportunities don't come up that often around here, but they do come up and it's important to get some experience. So if he wants to let me know, I'm sure I can get DCR to give him a tour.
Why don't you talk to him offline so we can
Yep.
can finish
Yeah.
our meeting and it's been a long
So do
meeting.
we want to do the 19th at 8?
Okay, team, how does the 19th look? And Mary, does that work for you? Or you already seen
yeah,
the
I've already
site?
seen the site, so
Okay.
I'm okay. I just would ask that Tom check with the property owner to find out whether neighbors are permitted on the property. If not, they certainly can be on
Stand on the street
ways
watching. Yeah,
around the
yeah,
property if they have
yeah,
questions.
it's certainly, yeah. Okay. Woody, are you available Thursday at 8?
Yes,
Nick,
I
how
am.
about you? How about yourself?
I'm available.
Frank?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, Frank, you're available, and Diane, you're jet setting to Paris for New Year's?
No, I should be available, but I'm very familiar with the site, so. but
Okay, yeah, you
I'll
live
let
right
know.
down the
I
street.
should be there.
Okay, all right, so why don't we do this? Why don't we schedule a site visit for Thursday, December 19th at 8 AM at 337th Street? And Tom, if you could clarify if the owner will allow the neighbors to
Right.
be able to
I will,
attend.
and I'll get in
Yeah.
touch with Mason on that.
Okay,
So we should be good. All right.
okay. All right,
Okay.
anything else in this matter? All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next matter, that we had a general project discussion, Locken Road Dam removal. You've seen the presentation. We had a site visit there last Thursday. Mason and I were out there. We met with the entire team, walked the site. Mason, why don't you give us your overview on that?
Yep, 1 second. So yeah, Bob and I were able to go see the site, and walk it with the team. Mostly going over, some more of the logistical things that'll apply to the Conservation Commission, in terms of staging and equipment and such. So we went over that. There is, a pretty decent sized access road, on the far side of the Larkin Bridge that they'll be using. Staging in and abutting properties backyard that is actually town property, but he's erected a fence and it's been there for a while. So Tracy and the town have been in contact with him to get the fence down. That's where they'll be staging. We had discussed where we'd like to see erosion controls there. And yeah, besides that, it was pretty interesting to see the project with all the rain that we had gotten. Water was flowing over the dam, and yeah, looks like it's gonna be a really interesting project.
Yeah, there was still some unknowns, as I recall. We were asking, there's a lot of concrete out there. So they're certainly removing what we had all visualized as the dam. The fish ladder, which kind of runs parallel to the dam, but up, but it's probably about 125 feet long. They're going to fill that in order to create a access to take out the dam. And then they're going to excavate whatever rock and concrete and haul that off site and fill that in. Mary, the one thing that they couldn't answer was there's a diversion, and my knowledge of dam terminology is, I'll be damned. It looks like that there was a spillway that would direct energy towards like either an overflow spillway or back to where the grist mill was. That they didn't know if that concrete, it's almost like a box culvert, whether that's going to come out and be filled in or, yeah, if you could show that, I think it would be.
Yeah, one second, let me find which one it's in.
Mason, you get 23-year-old eyes. You should be able to just look through those files. Yeah. That's actually part of it right there.
Yep.
If you put your arrow, if you put your arrow at 6 o'clock, the lower part, that's kind of a concrete box culvert that water would flow under. We were asking basically what hard structures were going to be removed or what was not going to be disturbed.
So that's like the low flow?
Yeah,
Okay.
or it looks like the overflow if it.
Okay.
But no one could answer quite what it was, but the thought was it was diverting water to the grist mill to turn whatever. Yeah, oh, the low flow, that's right, by the dam, that would cause the low flow to go over there. Okay. This is the fish ladder. So we are asking, are they removing the concrete, which is basically kind of a masonry set wall. And the answer was yes, but it was going to be after the fact. They're going to fill this in, remove the dam, start hauling everything out, and then cleaning their way out. We asked that the trees to be removed would be flagged. So we will see when the plans come in, but that was pretty much
Did they
it.
say when they were planning on filing?
They were still kind of shooting for January.
Okay.
Now, so if they file in January, that puts them probably towards the end of the month. It will likely be the meeting is what, the 22nd meeting, the 21st, is it? Yeah, January 21st. And that was pretty much it. The other thing, team, was, Mason, we got the annual report from the Parker River Research Station. That was in the Dropbox.
Yep.
Didn't flag any issues or concerns in a quick read. But you know, they've been very good about submitting their annual reports. We probably have other annual reports we haven't gotten from people that are required to submit them. So I think that's about it. Anything else, Mason, that you want to?
Yeah, just a quick update today. I got a call from Kyle Lally at DEP today. He's been in contact with John Colantoni for the project at 108 Main. And it seems like they're working out some things for a 401 water quality certification, and some things that should have been permitted before the fact. So he'd be keeping me updated with that, because we know that has been extended with the COVID tolling. So yeah, just a brief update on that, and I'll be sharing more information as it comes in.
Yeah. That's an interesting point, Mary. What do we do with that? Basically, they have an order of conditions that is in full force, but all of our order of conditions say it's subject to all other applicable permits required at the local, state, or federal level. So if a 401 permit is required, how do we handle that, I guess?
We don't have to handle it, because we don't do the 401s. I'm not sure what you're.
Well, I think what DEP was saying is it should have been required or conditioned. I don't want to put words in Mason's mouth.
No, we don't condition it. The applicant should have filed if they were
Okay.
required to file and they didn't. That's not on us.
So if they start work without it, do we stop them, or what do we do?
Yeah, we could,
Okay.
notify DEP at least that
Yeah.
we're aware of it. I mean, often, well, I'll see conditions will say, we know that you are going to need a 401 water quality certificate because there's, more than 5,000 square feet of wetland alteration on this project, or it's a real estate subdivision that triggers one, and they'll put it in, provide us with a copy of it once it's received.
Right.
And that the order isn't valid until it's received.
Okay.
But it's still up to the applicant if they're responsible for getting a permit and they didn't.
Okay.
That's on them.
All right, so Mason, just keep track of that. At some point, I think Colin Tony's going to come in and look for an extension on, his first extension on this.
Yep.
So. Okay. Last word, any parting comments other than wishing everyone a happy holidays, safe travels, and if you like snow, hopefully it's only in New Hampshire or Maine or Vermont.
Happy.
Yeah.
Happy
Holidays.
holiday, Merry Christmas.
Okay. All right, Mary, will you entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I entertain it. Yes, I'll make a motion.
And I will
That's what I really
second that motion.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, all in
Great.
favor? Mary,
Aye.
Yes.
Woody, Mick,
Yes.
Diane,
Thanks,
Yes.
Bob.
everyone.
Yep.
Yes.